Hello, my name is Greg Krivacek, and today I'll be speaking about cognitivism, the psychology of knowledge and strategies. And I'll be focusing on the information processing model. The learning objectives will be as follows. Objective 1, students will be introduced to cognitivism, the psychology of knowledge and strategies. Objective 2, students will learn about the steps of the information processing model. Objective 3. Students will be able to identify effective techniques for transferring information from short-term memory to long-term memory, and we'll be taking a look at chunking and mnemonics. Objective 4. Students will explain the difference between the two key modes of retrieving information from long-term memory, recall versus recognition. The information processing model states the mind is like a computer model. The mind has steps of how information travels and people learn. In this picture, you could see the information processing model represented by the man and his mind. And that equals the computer model. In the computer model, the first step down below to the left is the input devices. And in the information processing model, or the mind, this is the sensory register, or also called the sensory memory. In the next step, or the second step of the computer model, this is the central processing unit. Or in the information processing model, or the mind, this is where information is processed in the mind. And in the third and final step of the computer model, this is the hard drive storage. And in the information processing model, or the mind, this is the long-term memory, where information is stored and retrieved. Okay, let's take a look at the very first step of the mind, where all the information comes in. This is the sensory memory, remember? All the input comes in, the stimuli from the environment, the senses, what we see, hear, smell, feel, all these nerves are sending information to the brain. And there's seconds, large capacity of information coming in. The mind is saying, is it important? Should I process it immediately or ignore it? So there's important information and non-important information coming in. And the mind here is attending to this information and transferring it, or it's ignoring the information. If it sends this information on, it goes to the next or second step, the short-term memory. And if you recall, this is where the information is processed. This is the working memory of the mind. This is where all the thinking is done. There's more time in this part of the mind with limited capacity. There's a temporary storage. There's only so much information the mind can hold at one time here. And you can see in the picture there, the student is raising their hand and they say, "Mr. Osborne, may I be excused? My brain is full." And this is what's happening in the short-term memory. Okay, also, you can maintain information in short-term memory, or if you don't, it is decayed, lost, or forgotten. So it's important to try and maintain it, at least the important information that you want to move to long-term memory. Attention is very important in short-term memory. If there's interference, that's the principal cause of forgetting information in short-term memory. Okay, there's two important processes to assist in moving information from short-term memory to long-term memory. There's rehearsing. This is repetition and association. For example, With repetition, memorization would fall in that category. And memorization is not efficient or effective. You'll probably forget the information. Association can be a little better, where you associate to try and remember information. Someone's name, for example, associating what they look like with their name. Attaching meaning is a very good way to help remember and move this information into long-term memory. Also, there's encoding. Examples of encoding would be chunking and mnemonics. And chunking is where grouping multiple pieces of information into meaningful clusters. For example, once again, you can only retain so much, and you want to move this into long-term memory or it's forgotten. And once again, one way is through a technique, an enhancing technique called chunking. And this is the amount of information. It does increase when you place in chunks. For example, let's say you go to the grocery store and you have to buy 4 items. And you might create a word to remember those 4 items, like let's say they're grapes, eggs, milk, soup. Well, the first letter of each word spells a word. Gems for grapes, eggs, milk, soup. So you might remember gems as a way of remembering grapes, eggs, milk, soup. So you've chunked the information. Okay, mnemonics is simply creating letters to help you remember. Chunking is a mnemonic device as well. The important thing here is you want to attend and transfer the information. And the next slide is going to show us more examples of mnemonics. For example, you remember Roy G. Biv. It stands for the color of the rainbows. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. What about the mnemonics MVEMJSUNP? It's the phrase, my very educated mother just saw us near Pittsburgh. And it helps you remember the planets closest to Earth: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Okay, also acronyms that spell something, like HOMES. This acronym here spells the Great Lakes. And if you recall, the Great Lakes: Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, Superior. Can you name the first 5 presidents of the United States? If you could, you're probably using some form of mnemonics. For example, I can say a sentence that helps me remember them. I was in Washington, D.C., Washington's the first, on Adams Street, Adams is the second, when my son Jefferson, Jefferson's the third, asked me if we could go to Madison Square Garden, Madison's the fourth, and I said tomorrow, and Monroe is the fifth. So mnemonics can be a very effective way of helping you to remember information. Okay, so long-term memory now holds information well learned that the short-term memory has transferred over. There's a lot of time and effort required to move to long-term memory. The capacity is unlimited. Once you store it there, you can retrieve it on demand. Also, I wanted to acquaint you with the difference between recall and recognition once information is stored in long-term memory. Okay, these are both 2 key modes of retrieving information from long-term memory. Recognition is simply when you see or hear something and you compare it to information stored in memory and you find a match, and you will recognize it. For example, police lineup. You're recognizing the individual in the lineup. Recall is retrieval of information from memory without a cue. For example, no police lineup, but they want you to describe the person. So this is an exercise in recall. Okay, another example of recognition versus recall is taking a test. If a test is multiple choice, then you will use recognition to find the answer. You look at one of the choices and your brain may recognize that one of the answers has already been stored. Alternately, recall is used in the form of a short answer. You fill in the blank or essay. In comparing recall versus recognition, recall is definitely more difficult. then recognition because no hints in finding the answer. Therefore, recognition is easier than recall. For example, recognizing familiar face almost instantly. But let's say you struggle to come up with a person's name in recall. Okay, there's three types of information that are in long-term memory. There's declarative, facts. Okay, there's also procedural, how to do things, for example, driving a car. There's episodic, events in your life, place, time, where were you born, when were you born. Let me ask you a question. Do you remember my first name? Is it stored in long-term memory? Are you able to retrieve it? Hello? My name is Greg. Okay, I have some assessment questions that I'd like to review with you. Cognitivism, question number 1. Cognitivism is known as the psychology of, and this is from Learning Objective 1. A, behaviorism. B, Albert Einstein. C, knowledge and strategies. D, animals. And the correct answer is C, knowledge and strategies. Cognitivism, question number 2. In the information processing model, the processing of information in the mind is completed in what step of the process? Hint, known as the working memory. This is from Learning Objective 2. A, sensory memory. B, short-term memory. C, long-term memory. Or D, the mind cannot think or process information. And the correct answer is B, short-term memory. Cognitivism, question number 3. Memorizing information is an effective technique to transfer information from short-term memory to long-term memory. And this is from Learning Objective 3. Is the answer A, true, or B, false? And the answer is B, false. And finally, cognitivism, question number 4. In taking a multiple choice exam, what key mode of retrieving information from long-term memory are you utilizing? And this was covered in Learning Objective 4. A, recall. B, recognition. C, guessing. D, cheat sheet. And the answer is B, recognition. I hope you enjoyed my presentation on cognitivism, the psychology of knowledge and strategies, and the information processing model.